Hey, so people can get a volume check, have you run a mystery in a tabletop RPG before, Rafi?
Who, me? Why, yes, I have. In fact, I run a number. Some of which you've been there for. But hey, listen. Really, sudden memory loss hits all of us at various times. But yes, mysteries are one of my favorite things to run in tabletop RPGs. The when players have that aha moment, it's very gratifying and truly, truly delightful watching players intensely rub their chins and discuss theories about things.
Yeah, no, I love writing and running mysteries too. So much that I actually wrote an essay about it in the past. But I have a number of conventions this year actually where I've been invited to go and do a talk about mystery writing. I'll be getting the tune switch up, but that's all good. We'll get into that for a second.
That was my DJ software mysteriously crashing, but that's okay.
That's so fine. It'll resume when it resumes. But for now, just to give a rundown of what we'll be covering today. So not quite ARG, but we're definitely going to be giving you a rundown on how to run them yourself if you're ever interested. Also, hi Hydromancer and hi Ruben. I didn't say hi to Ruben as well earlier. Apologies. But yes, I have a couple of cons coming up this year where they have invited me to go and talk about writing mysteries, and I have this presentation put together. And I wanted to go and give it a test drive. So I'm going to run it for all of you, and then the VOD will be available for other people to go and watch this presentation themselves if they can't obviously make it to physical in-person con events. It also gives you an opportunity to ask questions and offer feedback about the presentation so I can make some alterations to it, so when I run it in real life for other people, it will be even better.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were done, but I think you can rejoin the stream.
Sure. We have an hour and a half slot going. So I'm going to be doing a bit of a timer and keeping time on it, just to make sure that I'm doing everything to time. You're gonna get another view of my living room very briefly, while I go and get the tunes back in everybody's ears, and then we'll get to it. Yes. Cool. That should be at a reasonable volume. Where do we submit questions? Just in chat? Yeah, just in chat. We're keeping an eye on it. We're here for living room views, I appreciate. Definitely built by AI Kia. There we go. Right. With that ready, everybody's in their seats, everybody's comfortable, everybody's got water, and thank you very much for being open to ask questions in chat. There'll be a specific place for Q&A, but if you want to kind of raise your hand and offer notes as we go, I have a feeling people are going to do that in the presentations for real, so we'll try and field them as best as we can. Apologies if I do not answer your questions immediately while we're mid-presentation. But with that all of the way, I'm going to start the timer. Okay, let's get to it. Welcome, everybody, to my presentation, which I have pithily called Detectives and Dice Rolls, Mystery Writing in Tabletop RPGs. Thank you so much for coming to my talk. A little bit about me. If I am in a position to reveal that information about myself, I can. Yeah, there we go. Welcome, contestants. I am your androgynous android game show host, caster, tabletop RPG designer, streamer, voice actor, and general internet ne'er-do-well. You may have seen my exploits before on both itch.io and on stream, and on the Campaign Skyjacks podcast, where I voice Captain Oromar Vale. I love designing tabletop RPGs with a queer Afrofuturist flavor. And to introduce my co-host for this stream, although probably not for the presentations that I am doing in real life,
I'm being flown to MinamiCon.
Yeah! Rafi will be joining me for this presentation with the tunes. We'll also be chiming in on certain bits and pieces of the presentation where they have also actually been involved with some of the projects I'll be talking about today. But yes, thank you, Rafi, for the beats.
My pleasure.
So yes, I love doing tabletop RPGs about queerness, about music, about art, and about community. But most of all, I love mysteries. I love mysteries so much. I grew up with basically three main pillars of the content that I consumed as a kid: Mega Man, Battle Network, and Pokemon, and that kind of like shonen monster battling stuff, with game shows and mystery stories, and not like highbrow mystery stories. I mean, like, I watched a lot of CSI New York and and Las Vegas when I was a kid. I was buying the volumes of the Case Closed manga translated into English when it was released. I have devoured like every Phoenix Wright and Danganronpa video game. And if you're one of the 3 people in the world who also watched the Veronica Mars TV show, we can be friends. It is genuinely one of my favorite TV shows. I am unfortunately not super well read. There is not a lot of Agatha Christie in my mystery consuming life, nor a lot of classic Sherlock Holmes, but that is okay. You can actually write fabulous mysteries without needing to have an encyclopedic knowledge of other styles of mystery writing. And I, today, am going to show you how. What we're going to be covering today are 4 main things. Our first section is how we're going to be running investigation scenarios as a game master. If you are a forever player rather than a game master, this isn't going to be spoilers. This is just going to be something that you can show your game master so they can start integrating some mysteries the way that you like them. But also, this is a good way of being able to collaborate with your GM to be really enthusiastic about the things that you want to see. Then we're going to follow that up with a number of different ways that you can write a mystery scenario. There isn't one true best method of doing that. Following that, we're going to have a little bit of an audience Q&A. So you can go and ask me questions if you have any general questions about writing mysteries, or if anything I have shown so far is not clear, then you can ask some questions. And then, to close out the session, let's go and write a mystery together. We're gonna, with all the skills that we've learned over the course of this presentation, we're gonna go and try and put together a mystery from scratch. Violence in VTuberville is what I've decided to go and call it. But let's go and cover our first topic.
I'm in danger.
We're gonna cover our first topic with an infomercial. Has this ever happened to you? Have you been playing the Dragon game or similar and exploring a wizard's study or maybe laboratory, and your GM has told you that there are some important clues that you need to access? Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. And to find these clues, you have decided to make an investigate roll. Unfortunately for you, the dice weren't in your favor, and you only rolled a 5, including modifiers. Your intelligence stat is not very high. Unfortunately, it is meant that you do not find the critical clue until you spend the next 45 minutes just rolling dice randomly and arbitrarily until a number is high enough for you to proceed. This is the point, chat, where you can actually say whether something similar like that has happened to you before. It sure as fuck has happened to me. And it's not fun. It can be really intriguing to go into an investigation scenario where you have big, broad ideas about the solving the mystery and connecting the evidence. But if that's all locked away behind dice rolls, and those dice rolls just don't happen to be ones where you succeed, it can really slow the nature of a story or make a story really frustrating. There's nothing worse than when a very exciting pace grinds to a halt. And it's something that happens very uniquely in tabletop RPGs, right? The way that mysteries are written in TV shows or in books or in video games doesn't apply to the way that tabletop RPGs work, because they are interactive in a way different to a video game, because in a video game it can patiently wait for you to succeed and you have a finite amount of time when playing in real life. In a movie, you don't necessarily need to be following along the mystery for the mystery to be solved. And in a book, if you miss a key clue, you can flick back through the book to an earlier part and reread some information. This has happened to Shamini before. Thank you for putting your hand up and giving an example. Well, don't worry, as a GM, I have hints for you. Basically, this boils down to finding these circumstances to keep the pace up, even when things aren't going well dice-wise. In tabletop RPGs specifically, the thing that you don't want is to have the pace come to an end, and in a mystery, that means reaching a dead end. We want to avoid those circumstances where failing a roll stops the narrative. And there was actually a video game quite recently that is, I think, a very good mystery game, but handles dice rolls in a way that would, I think, be quite poisonous to a tabletop RPG. Any guesses what it might be? It is Disco Elysium. Disco Elysium is a fantastic video game, really emotional, really passionately made, a delightful soundtrack to cry in the rain to. But one of the things that really frustrated me as a tabletop GM looking at how this game is framed as a tabletop RPG experience made digital is that there's a number of checks in the game that will progress the story, but if you fail them, you cannot reattempt them again until you go away and do something else and functionally level up to come back. Basically, you could be making astounding progress and connecting evidence together and knowing how the story can proceed, but because you didn't get the number the game wanted, the game hard comes to a stop and you have to occupy yourself with something else. And if that happened in a real game, or if that happened in the real tabletop RPG, I would be very, very frustrated if the end is in sight about connecting the evidence, but the numbers weren't high enough. This essentially boils down to my first point, and leading into what Ruben has said in the chat here, don't leave important clues to chance. Remember, you only need dice rolling in a tabletop RPG is optional. You only really need to roll the dice when the outcome is interesting and it would move the story forward. And not finding critical information, not finding those key clues that pushes the story forward isn't actually interesting, I don't think. Not when actually being able to let your players go, Eureka, this is the clue that we need to solve the case, and just stonewalling them. I've never enjoyed that as an aspect. And there are instances where the profession or nature of a character would lead them to be able to do a specific thing in terms of gathering a clue. Imagine, if you will, a character who is a medic, and they had to do a dice roll for the autopsy, and they weren't able to perform the autopsy correctly, even though that is their job as an investigator. It would be very, I think, narratively inconsistent, even though the dice would say that they failed. Of course, there are certain games have mixed successes or partial successes, and that makes that space. There's a bit more wiggle room in the space of not having hard fails in roles like that. And in a mystery story, in a video game, or in especially in novels or in TV shows, there are no true dead ends. You never run into a circumstance where a character goes, well, I guess we just can't solve the mystery, and the story just ends there. But I'm hearing some things in the audience. I'm hearing a cry of protest. I'm hearing, hold the fuck on a moment. Clues should be guaranteed, but uncertain outcomes in a tabletop RPG is interesting. You know, there are the vast majority of tabletop RPGs, although not all, have a circumstance where they resolve uncertain circumstances. And hey, that runs counter to what I just told you, but actually, not really. Because rolling to investigate can be fun and valuable. It just depends on what you are rolling for. So you're not rolling to find the clue. The clue is guaranteed as long as they are asking the right questions and are in the right place. And that's relying on the players specifically to put on their detective caps and genuinely engage in the world. You want to reward them for that engagement that they're doing. They actively want to solve the case. So reward them with useful clues. What you're rolling for is maybe for detail. Like, you get the clue, but how much detail? You'll probably get the critical information that the knife is there, but do we understand about the nature of the blood on the knife? Does the player work out maybe an additional fun information on who the knife was previously belonging to, or how the knife was made. Those bits and pieces are additional bits of flavor that can give richness to the world and additional pointers as to where they go next, but the key piece of evidence that they need to proceed is already in their hands. Or for example, you're rolling for drama. They get the clue, but at what cost? For example, they might be hacking into somebody's computer to go and find a key file, and you're making a roll on the hacking check. They'll always be able to get inside the computer, but if they failed that roll, maybe it means that somebody noticed. Maybe it means that they're now being tracked. Maybe it's adding those additional bits of drama that make the result of the roll much more complicated for them in the future down the line, making their lives more difficult. I think in general, it's kind of keeping open to a mind of what a failure means and avoiding, and I think this is kind of true for all tabletop RPGs, circumstances where failing a roll means no, nothing happens. You always want something to happen on the effect of a failed roll that pushes the story forward. And ultimately, when people make rolls and investigate things, and when they succeed, find the circumstances to reward them by letting them ask their own questions about what they want to find out. They're actively trying to solve the mystery, and you're not psychic. You're not in their headspace of what they want to find and what they want to learn. So ask them the question about what they want to learn, and then sprinkle in the essential clues on top of that. There are actually a couple of tabletop RPGs that are specifically about investigating mysteries that do a pretty good job of framing their mechanics around encouraging this style of behavior. Two in particular, although there are more, that I would like to raise very briefly, are Monster of the Week and City of Mist. Monster of the Week is this text box to the left that says when you investigate a mystery, roll sharp. What I think it does a really good job here is that it specifically has a list of questions that the player can ask to prevent them from floundering in terms of what they want to do with the information when they are making an investigation. It is always prompting the player to actively think about what they would need to push the story forward by asking some of those questions. And it also highlights specifically on a miss, it's not that you don't find a clue, it's that your investigation makes something more complicated, or that the GM gets to ask questions of the players and start like involving their background and nature into the story itself in that kind of way. City of Mist also has a similar style of investigation role, but specifically with that game, when you are investigating, instead of specifically getting the information then and there, you gain essentially clue tokens that the player can cash in further in the story or immediately to ask questions about that specific topic. You might find that bloody knife and not have any important questions about it now because you don't have context, but maybe later down the line in the story, you find somebody who is a professional at making knives, and then suddenly you actually have a use for your clue token, and you can cash that in and start asking custom questions and encouraging the players to combine the information that they found automatically, and then the interest is how they are applying that information. Moving on to the next thing, make more clues than you need. There is a very good blogger and YouTuber called The Alexandrian who has done a lot of writing on this about the 3-clue rule. Rafi has temporarily disappeared, but that is okay. We're going to keep things pushing. The 3-clue rule is essentially meaning that for a single piece of evidence or a single fact that you want your players to know, having 3 separate ways that they can find that fact. There is, I think, an example that the Alexandrian gives in Sherlock Holmes where he deduces a person's height, and he manages to do that by the stride of their step. When they write something on a wall and the height that they've written it at, and then the third piece of information that doesn't immediately come to mind. But they're finding multiple pieces of clues that all build towards the same truth. What that means practically, I can't believe there's a mystery going on where we're learning about how to write them in the TTRPG. What a way to learn. Sure. Is the person who did the Alexandrian remix of Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Oh, yes, the Alexandrian has kind of involved himself in a lot of different mystery-related materials. So I'm not surprised he was involved in Dragon Heist. It's not a book I've read myself, though. Basically, what this boils down to is that there's multiple ways of obtaining the same information. So if your players happen to miss one, they are not missing out on the clue entirely. But it also means that if they do happen to find more than one instance of these clues, that they are not locked into if they find more than one of these clues, it means that their information is corroborated. It means that it's obviously not a red herring because there are multiple signs pushing forward towards the same idea. If you will give me just 1 second, I will put on some beats myself while
I'm back. Mix is starting up. I don't know.
Don't worry about mix, because it would mean that I would have to kind of like do some tabbing away and stuff like that.
It automatically put you back in the stream. Don't worry.
Oh, okay, cool. Moving on then in that case to our next point. Yeah, we're getting tunes. Breaking character when you need to. Because immersive performances are fabulous. I love doing a little bit of method acting. I love getting to character and doing all the character voices, but that does not mean that you need to maintain character the entire time when you notice that your players are struggling. Don't worry about the tech issues. Scuff happens in all streams and in all presentations. It's just stress testing for the real thing. It's perfect. Basically, if you see players getting confused or frustrated, don't worry. You're not ruining the game for them by stepping out of character and asking what's up. Sometimes you just need to give them a nudge. They have the information in hand and they understand the information, but not necessarily how to apply it. And the key question that you can ask, and you can ask repeatedly throughout the process, and nobody's going to get tired of it, is what do you want to do with that info? Because what it will do is get a player to immediately start thinking about what they've learned with the wider context of the world. I am one of the people that occasionally has issues with attention when playing games, both as a player and as a GM, and instances that immediately prompt me to start applying the information that I've just learned is always useful for getting me to actually retain that info really, really well. In a similar kind of, has this happened to you before? But we don't need to go through the whole bit again. Have you been in a circumstance where your character is good at like sweet talking somebody or singing, and then the GM has said, hey, you sing, and then that means you need to sing as a person for me to say that you can do it in character? Because a lot of people would call that fucking unreasonable. So if that's true, why would you want to punish the character in the narrative who knows an information if a person in real life happened to forget? People are fallible. People in stories are infallible because they are a written narrative and will only forget when it is plot relevant. But people in real life forget things all the time, even if they are engaged in trying. So in those circumstances, feel free to remind a player of something that their character would know, even if they don't personally remember. And most of all, if you've been exploring that wizard study and they have done their really engaging and interesting roles and found all the things that they need to find, and there are no clues left, but there are still reams of bookshelves or filing cabinets for them to rummage through, just break character and tell them that there are no clues left. Save yourself and them the 45 minutes of saying what's behind this door when we could be moving on to the next scene. You can tell that I'm saying that from some personal experience, but it's okay, we're moving on. Another important point, and this feels like it's going to be kind of an obvious thing, but also I've been victim to not having done this in the past. Make a list for your clues. It is important for both yourself and your players. Nothing worse than having a scenario that makes perfect sense, but you have forgotten the key clue that makes it all connect up, and so your players don't find it because you as the GM don't remember it. Oh no. I've run into this a whole bunch of times. Writing the clues down is super important. If there is a canon order of events for the circumstances at hand, there isn't always, but if you're doing a standard murder mystery, there's probably a through line of all the things that have happened in the narrative. Write all that down before you do any other bits and pieces. There's no more clues. That seems like a trick, and I scanned the room again just in case. Yeah. No, you can tell them that it's good to move on. They don't need to stress out. Yes, always make sure that you have that full narrative of what the case is, what all the actions are before you start writing your clues, because it will be an excellent framework for the clues. It doesn't mean that you can't invent new clues, and in fact, having that canon order of events written down and in your head makes it easier to invent new clues if new clues need to be made. And especially if you're running a campaign, it's a really good idea to have a publicly accessible what happened last time and list of all your characters, because you're probably going to have, if you're like me or like Rafi, a huge cast of really cool characters, and you're going to forget their names or what they did or a specific job, or your players are going to be like, oh man, I remember that character, they were great, but I can't quite remember what their name was. And having all of that information just perfect, like accessible and actually editable by everybody so they can be invested about adding that information themselves is going to do a wondrous job of increasing retention for memory.
It also, having the big nice collection of all of your characters means that you don't forget that they exist when you're planning your next session. Just be like, oh my god, I haven't this NPC has been sitting in a closet for 3 days.
They're hungry and cold. To give some examples, in the halcyon days where I was running my TTRPGs in Meat Space and not over the internet, there was a murder mystery episode that I ran, and I made physical clue cards on like those kind of note cards you use for revision of exams, and that was great. It was so useful for the players to be able to actually have those clues in their hands and move them around, and it's actually really interesting to see how they organize that information, and how then, because they're connecting that information up that way, it also gives you a little bit of a hint of how you can guide them towards the goal, the truth of the matter. We also have there a screenshot of a dramatis personae and also general campaign document of an old offline campaign that I ran, The Strange Tales of Mainframe City Academy. If that sounds like a very anime name, then you scan down and see that the first 5 characters that we introduced are a student council. Yes, this was a very, very anime campaign. But it's actually one that was Rafi was involved in. One of the things that I did or made sure to do was that as part of the character list, I let all my players add a note about those characters in character, as a way to kind of add that additional bit of character retention and memory for who these people were and what the player characters thought of them. And you've since done bits and pieces like that since as well, Rafi, in some of the campaigns and stuff that we've been involved in since.
Indeed. Yeah, absolutely. Using different tools to get together big old documents with all the info about the different characters, and love to include spaces on those for players to leave notes. I think it's not just useful for them, but also nice for me to see what are they thinking, and oh boy, my players are engaged, involved. They care.
They care. Indeed, they do.
The people love me.
And we're going to be moving on to ways of writing a mystery. That's all my general GM advice. Hope that was all useful. If you do have any additional questions, do bear them in mind. There will be a Q&A section later on. But we're going to get into how to actually write these mysteries. Different tabletop RPG books, especially ones that are specifically about mysteries, will all suggest different ways of running them. Excuse me. And there is no best way. There is maybe a best way for a specific system. After all, the person who wrote that book probably has a very clear idea in mind of how they would want their game to be run, but which one to pick? And hey, depending on your personal energy levels or what your players are personally interested in, will very much change what kind of mystery writing is best for you. But if you're running a really long form campaign, then you can use a variety of these different methods to add in different textures, I would describe them as, to your campaign, so you're not all solving all of your mysteries the exact same way. First up, we're going to start with an easy one, or what I think is one of the easiest ways of writing a mystery, is a mini mystery. So instead of doing the grand sweeping murder or detective work that's going to be taking up the entire session or sessions. It's about exploring a single location that has multiple smaller mysteries in them. 3 is a pretty good number if you're going to be running a single, like, one shot that your players can investigate and learn the truth of. One of the ways that this can work really dramatically is that if they have to be navigating and moving around this space, it's not just being able to solve the mysteries, but can they solve the mysteries in time? Will some of these mini mysteries become inaccessible to them if time moves on too long, and so on and so forth? And writing these mysteries are actually quite simple. There's essentially 3 paragraphs that you need to write at minimum, and then, you know, any relevant game mechanics for the system that you're running on top of that. What's the location that your players are going to be investigating? What is the kind of rumor or strange thing about it that makes it a mystery? And what the truth of the situation is. This makes this kind of format really good for things like ghost stories, your kind of like a paranormal investigation, or your Scooby-Doo kind of circumstances, because those work really, really good with investigating rumors that you have heard ambiently that you are then checking out yourself. And keeping this light means that the clues that the players are going to be gathering can actually be quite easily improvised. And it's also a really good way of, if you were introducing a new location for your players to be exploring in sessions moving on from there, they've now already got a really nice understanding and energy of that location by having done these explorations. To give an example, there was a streamed one-shot that I did called Galaxy Galleria in a very good system called Net Battlers, Google it. That was kind of like a Vaporwave Y2K themed adventure, where 3 teens are exploring an abandoned mall, or not an abandoned mall, a mall after dark, rather, for 3 ghost stories that they have heard to go and take photos of for the school newspaper. And so I made sure that we actually had a map of the mall. That's actually based on a mall in the UK, and then highlighted those locations that they needed to go visit and where they were. And then in my GM notes, which we have to the side here, the more specific information about what the rumor was and the location and so on. So you can see it's actually quite simply written. Further on in that document, there are some game mechanics-y stuff and some stat blocks. But in terms of what the actual mystery was, that mystery is explained in like 5 paragraphs, really easy. This was actually a stream that was co-GM'd by Rafi, if you have any additional thoughts.
Yeah, I think mini mysteries can really take advantage of one, they're really good to fit into a one-shot, which may sound counterintuitive because, like, but that's a lot of content. But if you really lean into the mystery, or the mini part of the mini mystery, I think you can get the kind of, like, you know, here's a tight, punchy, you know, 3 tiny mysteries, little amuse-bouche of investigation. And also, as you can see the map screen over there, I find that I think the map prep we did really paid off in giving a sense of moving around space. And I would say broadly, a lot of investigation and mystery media blends nicely with having spaces to explore. And I think this is no exception.
Yeah, I think it's a really good way of being able to keep the pace up. And making sure, because there are so many things still to explore, your players are going to be hungry for seeing what those places that they haven't looked at are yet. So it kind of prevents them from wanting to dwell too much on one location, because they know that there are other juicy nuggets that you've hidden away in the map that they're exploring. Moving on to not much more, but a more tricky version of mystery writing is what I like to call the lost and found. Whether it's a missing item or a person, you're going to different locations to find clues, and those clues are giving you suggestions of what place to investigate next. And then there is that long chain or short chain of locations that you are visiting, and you get that progression that you're getting deeper and deeper into the mystery to be able to go and see what the truth of the circumstance is. If you ever played that 90s video game, Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? That is literally the lost and found method of mystery writing, and that's just testing your geography skills. There's no clue hunting in there really, but it's that kind of process of finding some information, understanding what that information tells you about the world, and then going to that place in the world to start acting upon it. It is a really good way of being able to make a large map processable. I'm the kind of person that gets decision paralysis when given sandboxes to go and play around in. If you give me a world map or even a city map with a whole bunch of places to explore, I wouldn't really know where to go next. And this is a really good method of thought of like thinking about how to go and make a location important. Because it can be important for one mystery. A clue can direct you to the all-night diner for you to go and interrogate one of the waitresses that is there. And then the all-night diner is something that your players know and remember because it was connected directly to the storyline, and then they can return there later on because they already know and are connected to that place. I previously mentioned City of Mist as a game that has a really good investigation role, but it actually also has a lot of GM advice in it for running mysteries. And it explains something called the iceberg method of writing a mystery. This is about revealing what relevant locations there are on the surface when you know nothing about the mystery, you haven't done any investigating yet. And then as you investigate more, the iceberg goes deeper. You can see more and more about the mystery, and then the truth of the mystery is at the bottom. It gives a good example here on that diagram to the right, where we witness the murder and the murder scene, and then as we investigate the murder scene, we then learn about other places that we can go visit, or like about the victim or the killer. Once we work out who the killer is, are we going to the morgue and doing an autopsy? Are we going to be finding interesting things in that autopsy, and we need to go and speak to an occultist to go and understand the eldritch sigils that were burned on this corpse's body, and so on and so forth. And it slowly directs you down towards the location where the truth is at hand. Now, we're going to be getting on to essentially two types of mysteries, but they're related to each other. And they're both relatively tricky to write, not because writing a mystery is difficult. I maintain writing a mystery isn't difficult, but this is the most time-consuming method of doing so. This is about clue gathering and interrogation style mysteries. I think you would probably call clue gathering the classic mystery style. If you're thinking of like your Sherlock Holmes or your Danganronpas. Actually, Danganronpa and Phoenix Wright are really, really interesting because those are two video game series that do both of these things in separate phases. If you've ever played a Phoenix Wright game, there'll be a circumstance where you're exploring a space and gathering clues and gathering those bits and pieces of evidence. And then you go to court and start using those bits of evidence to highlight contradictions. Those two different spaces are clue gathering mysteries and interrogation mysteries. What we're I quite like what I wrote here as a point of contrast is that you're using clues to explain the truth, and you're using testimonies to expose lies, and having an interesting blending of those can make a straightforward mystery story deliciously spicy. Clue-led mysteries like many places to investigate. We talked earlier about that lost and found style mystery where we're moving from location to location. Those work really, really well with clue gathering mysteries is because each location can have really broadly different genres of clues that you can find. The kind of clues you're going to be finding at a morgue is going to be different to the kind of clues you're going to be finding at a diner, even if they kind of direct you towards the same truth. Do you remember what we said earlier about that 3-clue rule? Those 3 clues don't need to be in the same place. Those can be spread across 3 different locations that direct towards the same truth. Whereas investigations can work really, really well in a single location. If you're kind of like, I've invited you all here this evening, and one of you is the murderer, where all these different pieces of people have been gathered in a single location or in a position to talk to and interrogate them all and see what they say and how that lines up or doesn't line up with what everybody says. A note from the audience: in my experience, no matter how concrete a clue is, once players know they are in a mystery scenario, they will do anything except following the objective facts. Well, this is what the 3-clue rule that we've mentioned previously is for. By having multiple clues that suggest the same truth, it ends up corroborating that information, so it makes the important facts much more clear. Also, as a GM, it is partially your responsibility to be able to nudge them back on track if they're getting lost in the weeds in something unimportant. It is a two-way street in that regard. Both clue gathering and interrogation style mysteries demand a full timeline of events leading up to the crime and how it was covered up afterwards. Not only is that going to help you make new clues or understand the clues that you're going to be delivering to your players during play, but even as you're writing it, if you have the full lineup of events, it now means that you can highlight those instances. At what points in the perfect plan could the culprit have made a mistake? You know how the crime would have gone in a perfect world, but this is an imperfect world, so we can find those points that we can pull on to make those weaknesses. Shamini brings up a really interesting thing about Columbo, and I'll bring this up now because Columbo is almost the antithesis to mystery writing. Columbo, if you've ever watched an episode of it, starts with the mystery being committed in full by the perpetrator. You see how they did it, and you also see how they covered it up. What the mystery is no longer relevant because we know that from jump. What Columbo is about how Columbo specifically pulls at strings to uncover the truth himself or to make the culprit slip, which is a very different space. I've yet to go and see a tabletop RPG attempt a Columbo style way of it, where the players actually already know what happened and they're going through the process just to expose the truth. I guess that's in the process of giving them all the clues up front and then letting them go prod at people in maybe an interrogation style mystery. But it's taking these fundamental rules and applying them in a different way. An example here is another stream series that we did. In fact, the first streamed campaign that I did on this channel, Arcana Core, run in both a mixture of City of Mist and Void Heart Symphony, where one of the arcs that we did, the second arc of the game, specifically was a clue gathering style mystery. Our players were investigating the Elysium Islands for various bits of evidence to go and find who attempted to murder a university student, and then they were able to raise those clues not only in speaking to various NPCs across that arc, but ultimately when they faced the prosecutor, a Knights Templar lawyer with a whipsword arm. They were able to refute the prosecutor's arguments because they had the evidence at hand to be able to rebuff its lies. You can tell that it was a very, very unsubtle Phoenix Wright reference, but hey, subtlety is for cowards. Rafi was a player in this campaign, actually. If you have any thoughts about how that scenario or how that session went, if you still remember, it was a long time ago.
Oh, it was a long time ago. Yeah, no, it's a hard thing to dig up, which I think is even greater encouragement for people to go dig into the YouTube VODs that Castor has here, or Nathan, and give Arcana Core a spin. Really, some really fantastic moments in that. Would love to have the hard work that my friend here put in still go appreciated.
Powerful early work. I put the YouTube playlist in the chat. But yeah. It was definitely across that campaign. I tried a lot of different forms of mystery establishment, and as a way to kind of experiment with the theories that I've been kind of brewing over time. So it's definitely a thesis statement of my approach to mystery writing. Anyway, moving on. Just raising this. There we go. Have any of you done a murder mystery party before? A murder mystery party, if you've ever encountered one of those, is a circumstance where everybody is given a role, a character to play of a murder, and then everybody's supposed to go around the table and speak to everybody else to be able to discern who the real culprit is. That is actually a really practical example of an interrogation style mystery. To ruin all murder mystery parties for you for the future, if you do one, it's really just a matter of speaking to everybody in turn and then finding the one person whose statement doesn't line up. Because of the way that these work, they can't really have multiple layers of complexity of lies. They can only really have one person lying. So as long as you speak to everybody, solving the mystery isn't too difficult. But they are quite fun, and it lets you do a silly character voice for a couple of hours. There have even actually been at some conventions a live action version of a murder mystery, which is the picture on the right. That is a shot from Kitacon last year, where the illustrious Nez Long ran a live action murder mystery called It Was Fucking One of Yous. Where it was a murder that happened at the convention. They had a number of cosplayers who also had kind of fully studied lines about the nature of the mystery, and you went around as groups to speak to them in turn. It was actually really nicely paced because you had to speak to most of those people more than once. You talked to one person and learned some information, and then you talked to a different person and then learned that what you had previously been told no longer made sense. You rushed back to them being like, aha, well, they told me this. And it was a very, very satisfying and quite practical way of seeing how a player interactive mystery could operate. In fact, I spoke to Nez about this, and they were able to go and give me a couple of statements, which I'll read out to you now, about the process of writing it. I think the main thing I loved about it was crafting that story and going through and trying to predict all the different scenarios, because we can speak to those people in different orders, and how does the story shake out if you speak to this person versus this person. Deconstructing the story in that way allows for so many avenues to explore and fix. It gives you a real structural perspective of the whole experience. It's quite interesting because that structure is actually really different from, say, the Lost and Found style of mystery we talked about previously, where you start at a single location, so you have a really finite number of people that you can speak to, and then that broadens out as you gain more information. In this circumstance, you do have a finite number of people to speak to, but they're all in very disparate areas, and you can spend quite a lot of time speaking to them. So finding out how you can solve the story, even if you go in a different order, is actually its own challenge. The other thing that they said, a notable challenge was at the planning stage, trying to tie together any loose threads and balancing to ensure it wasn't too easy or too challenging. Somehow got it just right, but not knowing that during the first hour was very stressful, for sure. In fact, there was actually a point where there was a lockbox with a clue and a piece of bloody thread inside that was used, and there was somebody just surreptitiously refilling that lockbox and resetting the code as people were solving that and retrieving it. And it was, as playing that circumstance, it was so much fun to realize what that potential code could be, and rushing over with my group to this box being like, I've got the solution, and then entering it in and feeling real smug. It was very, very good. Anyway, talking about the last style of mysteries, did all of that sound like really complicated and really time-consuming? Well, you just don't have to write a mystery story at all if you don't want to. Some tabletop RPGs offer a playset of people and places and just leave the connections fully up to chance. This is a circumstance where not even the GM knows what the truth of the mystery is, and everybody is playing to find out. One of the biggest examples of that in terms of indie tabletop RPGs for many years was a system called Tech Noir or Mech Noir. If you are a fan of the actual play podcast Friends at the Table, they did a very long campaign of Mech Noir. The way that they ran it didn't really lean in on the mystery connection parts. They didn't talk about that system much, but everybody to reveal. Everybody was playing that game in a way where they didn't actually know what the truth was. They had a list of names, of organizations, of motivations, and as they visited people and talked to people, new cards were drawn and were connected essentially to a conspiracy theory grid of how all this information connected. Much more recently, as in released last year, is a new tabletop RPG called Brindlewood Bay. Brindlewood Bay has been described by the creator of the game as Golden Girls meets Cthulhu, where a group of old ladies who are part of a detective novel fan club are investigating their local town, having discovered something that could be a murder mystery themselves, and then realizing it becomes more than that. In Brindlewood Bay, you only roll to solve the case once at the end of the session, at the end of the run of that storyline. Very, very strange to me, because you're gathering those clues and you're still doing that clue gathering thing, but there is a randomized list or an arbitrary list that the GM is picking from or rolling randomly for them to find and just have. Those clues don't have any wider context by themselves, but at the end of the game, when the players want to solve the mystery, they talk about what they think the order of events was, including the clues that they've found, and they get additional points on their roll for as many clues as they have included. And then when they roll their dice, if it's above a certain number, they've solved the case. Meaning that you could solve the case with a single clue if you were really lucky, or minimal numbers of clues, or they could gather a large number of clues and roll low and they just don't solve the case. And that's really, really interesting from a dramatic space. But is that really what you're looking for when you are running a mystery scenario? I admit, for me personally, it isn't. I think I gain a lot of joy in designing a puzzle box and then watching people solve it, and the delight in their eyes when they realize the information that they've gathered makes sense in a different context and acting on that. And you don't really get that when the outcome is randomized. That's not to say that these are bad tabletop RPGs, as we have from the chat. Deck is a big fan of Brindlewood Bay, and I think the nature of the game is really, really evocative. It has some really, really great things about making these badass grannies be mystery solvers. That's really charming, but it's not the style of mystery writing I would personally do. Right, that was a lot of talking, and we're on pretty good pace, actually. Only 50 minutes in an hour and a half thing. So I think now is time for some Q&As. It's time for me to be cross-examined by the lawyers of the audience. Does Rafi have any questions? Good choice, good choice. Do you folks in the chat? Why don't you go ask me a question first, Rafi, while the chat filters in what questions they want to ask?
Sure, yeah, please chat. Pour your brains out into the orifice known as the text box. But yeah, I would say, when it comes to the 3-clue rule, I think, there's a fine balance to strike between trying to make sure that players are going to get the clues that they need and are going to kind of have it impressed upon them that, this is important, you can triangulate information from here without having it feel like, oh, we just stumbled into a clue dungeon, or like, oh, the culprit is incredibly careless and left their business card out in 3 different places.
For sure. Avoiding that circumstance, I think there are 2 good ways of avoiding that. Is the thing I mentioned before about the 3-clue rule can apply to multiple different locations. So it's reinforcing that idea split across multiple places. So as they investigate wider things, it's now confirming the information that they already know. But one good way of being able to do it, and also kind of like sweep through the circumstances of clues that players might have missed, but we don't want to dwell on going back to a location to find, is to have an NPC. They can either be friendly or rivalrous, but having somebody that is also looking into this mystery that they can speak to. If you're running a detective story, there are probably other detectives in your police department. You might have the oracle, the hacker, the person who's like your remote mission recon person, who's maybe looking into the mystery themselves, and they can be a really good device for being able to naturally have somebody come in, and you can speak to them. The players can speak to them to confirm what they already know. Check what's real and what's bullshit, and maybe even potentially where to go to next, without making it feel like you are drip feeding them those clues. Hey, welcome, Marshall. Marshall, welcome. You have arrived at a very, very interesting time. We're currently running a panel on, I'm running a panel for everybody about how to run mysteries in tabletop RPGs. We're currently in the question and answer segment. See if you've ever been interested on if you have any questions on running a mystery in a tabletop RPG, now is your chance to ask. Does chat have any additional questions? I love the 3-clue rule. Or just thoughts and feelings. We're in a position for me to actually read them. Chat has been delightfully active while I've been doing the presentation, but I wasn't really in the chance to read all of them. I apologize. I love the 3-clue rule, especially for clues that go over big overarching mystery that you pick up as you go along. You mentioned a few, but there are more tips for a mini mystery in a single location. Example, a single room that they'll only be in once, and it's just one piece of the puzzle that you want them to figure out, but you want it to feel earned. Right. Yeah, I guess stuff like a mini mysteries in a single location, and it's a single room that they're only going to be in once. I think it's where you put that single location. Because if you put that if you put this single location that you want to feel really satisfying quite early on, they're not going to have that much time. They're going to be eager to get to other bits and pieces, right? It's kind of working out that pacing, right? And I think having the single room that feels the most satisfying is one nearer the end where they actually have some evidence to start flinging around and they have some context. Because early on in the mystery, they might not actually have that much context, especially if it's a one-shot. So they're just going to be kind of poking around in the dark for what juicy hooks they're going to be looking at, and that's your key chance to give them some juicy evidence early to kind of get them interested. This is the point where in like a murder mystery style TV show, or even a show like House, right, where they're doing the diagnoses, they have the really weird symptom of the malady show up quite early, because that's what gets butts in seats, right? That's like, oh, this isn't a normal murder. This is a weird murder. And that's that kind of hook that gets them in, and then they're going to be thinking about that weird part as they're going. So it's kind of finding the weird clues that you can give early that don't solve the mystery, and then highlighting back to that as you go, just every so often reminding them about that and keeping that in the back of their minds about when that weird clue is going to be super relevant. At the end, it's just making sure that that single room that they're only going to be in once satisfies at least one of the mysteries that they are looking into. I think the dopamine levels go up in players and as a GM when those connections make sense. And it doesn't have to be the entire mystery. It's only just a leg of it. It's like, oh, that's how they were able to get out of the room. I don't know who did it, but I know how they escaped, and that's going to be useful going on forward later. I've no experience with tabletop mysteries, but I've run a few live action conspiracy games. They're quite good fun, but a lot of work to keep going. Yes. The more people involved in the mystery, like as players, the harder it is. Although I think that's definitely true of all tabletop RPGs. I am very reticent to run sessions for more than 4 people, unless it's like a one-shot and the pressure is quite low, just to kind of give everybody the amount of spotlight that they deserve as part of the game. You're going to say something, Rafi?
Oh, I had a question for when this was done.
Go for it.
Do you have any thoughts on settings that may be more conducive for mysteries? That can be either in terms of like the the type of place, your mansion, your boat, your island, what have you, or that could also be different genre settings, like cyberpunk future, your
right.
noir, etc., etc.
I mean, I find if you've never really written a mystery before, a single locked location is really good because it sets very heavy parameters on what people can do and where they can go. If you can kind of make it clear that a mystery the clues to it only really within a single location, it immediately stops players' brains from wondering, oh, did they go like off the island to do part of this? It's like, no, you don't need to worry about that. All of it takes place in one location. The modern day is genuine, or something that has reasonable equivalence to the modern day, always makes the process of mystery writing specifically easier, because there's certain bits of modern technology that make writing and solving clues easier. The reality of things like forensics are not as glamorous or as straightforward or as easy as they are in CSI, but I think it would be hard pressed to introduce the idea of fingerprinting in like a medieval setting, right?
Ye olde luminol.
Yeah, you're not gonna find luminol in the Forgotten Realms, right? Also, within spaces where it's high fantasy, magic always makes these things more complicated unless the magic has very specific rules already. And in a way, the rules of magic are a clue in themselves. I think if you are going to be doing murder mystery or just mysteries in general in something where magic exists, part of what you're writing in terms about the order of events is why they had to use the specific magic they did to do it and not something else. Like, they either because of their own circumstances and limitations, they had to go for this specific thing and not other things. If the players have to start rummaging through the spells at the back of the player handbook to work out which fire spell they use to burn the body, you're already maybe going a bit off piste, and you need to kind of find some way to kind of rein in the scope of your mystery a little bit. Medieval Village is a pretty neat setting in my opinion. No tech, small amount of important NPCs, eerie atmosphere. Yes, that kind of murder mystery I think works really well as an interrogation style rather than clues, because anyone anywhere in any location can lie. Regardless of the setting or tech level, people will lie. People will cover for each other. People will fall in love and lie to protect their boyfriend. And those circumstances will work in whatever setting. I think if you find a circumstance where the scope of the story is also really complicated, if it's super high fantasy or super sci-fi, where murder methods or whatever could be really out there, and trying to deduce a murder weapon or murder style would be too swampy or too slow, don't worry about that. Make the murder method obvious and make the whole process about finding out who did it and why. You don't necessarily need to find out all the different parts of the mystery for the mystery to be juicy. Okay, we've been running about an hour, so I think we can spend our last hour writing a mystery together. Should we do that? Yeah.
Woo!
Our GM is doing an open world campaign, and he explicitly said, do what you want to us. Oh, fuck. No, I hate it. But there's a lot of mysteries and conspiracies in the campaign, but we kind of struggle to really care about it. On the last game, we just ran away to another city. Yes, when you have the just go wherever and do whatever you want, nothing has a priority anymore. Nothing has pressure into what you need to do. And me, as I said before, I suffer from horrendous decision paralysis and that kind of thing. So I'll get lost. I think it's really key to have a clue in a conspiracy, is to specifically have those circumstances to get players on a hook and know where they need to go specifically, and make that clear. You don't need to roll for it. You don't need to make it ambiguous. Make it super clear where players need to go to indulge in that conspiracy and find out more. Because if that's ambiguous, they're going to forget about it. Anyway, I'll read this last one thing from Doc Pocketmon and we'll go into this next bit. How do you deal with passive players that only ever ask questions out of character, if at all, but never actually do anything to have those questions answered in game? Last session, my players found a witness to a horrible crime, the only witness, and asked 0 questions. They just threw the person in jail for now and then forgot about them. I'm sorry when things like that go off the rails. It can always be really frustrating when you've kind of got the mystery in hand and then the players aren't engaging. We talked a little bit before about one of the golden questions is, what do you want to do with that information? Is, I think, so important. When you have something like a witness and didn't ask any important questions, well, this is your point as a GM to step in and say, hey, this is currently, the only person you're going to be able to get clues from right now, and it's going to be very difficult to learn more about the mystery unless you learn what this person learns first. So let's take a moment to talk about it. Breaking character like that, I think, is super important about keeping people engaged in the mystery, because they might have just forgotten to ask those questions, especially if they're used to kind of games that are very combat led and you don't need to ask questions of anybody. That might not be something that's running through their head if they weren't expecting to do a mystery scenario. So us as GMs have to do some of that forefronted work to encourage them to start asking those questions and then gently reminding them throughout the process. Oh, I'm not saying that you are a bad GM and you've done it all wrong. I'm kind of talking in a super broad sense so the people that don't have your specific context can understand what I mean. But yeah, it's a lot about being able to every so often give a gentle reminder that they do actually have a clue, even if they have forgotten, and then they're in the process of being able to pick it up. Anyway, let's write a mystery together. We're going to start out with just the headline that we've set here. So we have a premise. We're going to be calling the scenario "Violence in VTuberville." Now, we have two ways that we can do this, and you can join in for this process, Rafi. I would love for you to be also throwing in ideas as you go. We have two ways that we can do this. We can either do the full mystery style, where there is a single culprit doing a thing and we're going to be following the story of how they did it. Or this could be a mini mystery scenario where maybe we are looking at a specific location and there are 3 little points of interest that we can build up on. What do we want to go for?
I think, I certainly want to know what chat thinks, but I think it might be fun to try for the first kind, try for something a little bit more ambitious. We can rub our mighty minds together and let the static friction that comes from that lead us to getting pretty far in a short amount of time.
That sounds good. So what we're going to be trying to do in the first instance is we're going to be building the overarching narrative of this perfect crime. And I always like focusing on first. Because this is violence in VTuberville. This is going to be a murder mystery. We're going to set that out straight.
Oh, naturally.
Yeah. So, what was the murder weapon? How did Person X kill Person Y in VTuberville? What happened?
Ooh, okay, let's see. We're dealing with virtual creatures. That's right, not virtual people. VTubers are not people. I want to propose this is like executing some code to get the rig to break and basically just remotely snap their neck. Or, something like that. Maybe, their hand just goes and slaps them across the face so hard that they just die from the impact.
Ooh, I like that. So they ran faulty codes that made their rigging glitch out and snap their own neck. Ooh, that's juicy.
It can happen to you.
Yeah, no, I dig that. Digital knife. I like the idea of a digital knife maybe being what was it, like the using an ice pick, as it were, a Gordian blade. That might be a little bit of a red herring. But okay, so this notable, I said Gordian Blade very specifically, is indeed a Netrunner card. So it's faulty code. This means that somebody involved is a programmer. And is the murderer a programmer, or did they put somebody up to it? I think is an interesting aspect. Like, is there another character involved here who's an accomplice?
Yeah, I like the idea that the person who made the code is separate from the person who executed it on someone else.
So we now have a character who is a hacker who can make this virus. And I think they have a front of doing commissions on Twitter. So they're like, oh, I do art commissions. And then if you look at the fine print in that like set of 4 examples, you see that they also make illegal software.
Do you think that this person like used to set up VTuber rigs, but then stopped because of the incident?
Oh, I see. So we're talking about the motivations of the murder now. This is good. This is an excellent question that we come to here. So is everybody involved in this space of kind of like artists and commissions on Twitter? Is that the kind of like a thing that's linking these characters together? Or maybe the victim is somebody who started a really big commission and then ghosted someone?
Oh, that's very good. Or either that, or like the victim started a commission and then was like, oh hey, I'll get back to you on the payment. And the artist was like, oh, I mean, this person is so, surely they wouldn't abandon me. They're a big VTuber. They're not just some random.
Oh, so maybe so is the. I mean, I like the idea that everybody in this setting is a VTuber, but maybe the murderer here is maybe not as well established. Maybe they are small time and trying to get big in the space. So the culprit is small time. And maybe the victim is actually a really big name. So this was like, I can picture the cutscene of kind of like, it's your girl, Big Angel 23, and we're going to be streaming Minecraft for 9 hours. Be sure to give me those super chats, and I remove bits of my clothing every time you donate. And everybody's all kind of like, oh, we simp for you, feet pics. And then just as the game boots, it's like, oh, so we're having a bit of technical scuff, guys. Don't worry about don't worry about, and then the whole thing like falls apart.
Just like arms slowly raising by their side, like what's the, and then just Vine Boom as slaps himself so hard.
They're a big time VTuber. Cool, excellent. The culprit is small time and trying to integrate.
Can we be seeing your notes appear on screen?
I mean, I guess we're in a position where we can actually have it appear on screen, can't we? When I do this for reals, I don't think I have like a whiteboard to write on.
Gotcha. Okay, then don't worry about it.
But I'll display all the information later. Oh, we'll do it now. Give me a second. I have time. Okay. While I'm going and putting it up here, why don't chat and you come up with some fun ideas about who this commissioned hacker who made the software is? Who they?
Who is this hacker who? You perhaps used to set up. So my idea before being that this person used to do VTuber rigs and then stopped because of a tragic incident that ruined their VTuber rigging career. Now they're lowered to just drawing. But there's plenty of other ideas. There are depths to plumb here, folks. What is one bird brain worth? Not much. I want to get all of our tiny skulls buzzing on this.
Sparkle Friend, former VTube idol who got cancelled. Oh, ooh, character who is a hacker under the guise of image commissions was previously cancelled.
Was Sparkle Friend cancelled due to getting into let's see, what would be let's say Super Mario 64 speed running and then getting like an impossible chain of RNG and they were just like, haha, I mean, I just got really lucky, that just happens, and then a paper comes out proving like this would have needed to like this is an astronomically low chance, there's no way.
So what? I think I called the big time VTuber was like Big Angel 63 or something.
Yeah, I think it was 23, but yeah.
Big Angel 23. Okay, perfect. It wasn't even a good cheat either. Super obvious. I think I also joked that it happened during a playthrough of Minecraft.
Yes.
So
I mean, the murder absolutely happened during a playthrough of Minecraft. This is, I'm realizing this is kind of this is an interesting concept for a mystery. I guess it depends on how fast and loose we're getting with the idea of like, what is a VTuber? Because if we're getting very like, there's a lot of this that would need to be like scrubbing through archival footage.
Is a physical location.
I see. Okay.
In VTuberville. There we go. Good point. This now starts this start. That's very, very good. The stream gets automatically placed in the just getting murdered category. Very good. I like that. So now this makes me think about, okay, how was the like faulty code administered? It feels like the culprit had to go into the location of Minecraft and trap something with this faulty code, right?
Ooh, counter proposal. I think that's a good idea, but if the killer and the victim took hands at some point earlier, in a seemingly friendly gesture,
was a recent tournament of Guilty Gear Strive.
I need to use the restroom, so I'll be back in just a couple minutes.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
Go wild, go crazy.
It was disguised as a donation or just fan mail. Donate $10 to have me read your email on stream, and then they opened the email and died. Ooh, that's interesting. I feel like Big Angel 23 should be more masculine, maybe like George of the Jungle style hunk, with like still with the big angel wings. Yeah. I feel you. That's good. That's good. The idea of it coming through as a super chat or dono is pretty interesting. I think that's okay, right. We're gonna combine this. Guilty Gear Strive, the culprit and the victim shook hands, which placed the code into Big Angel, but the code is inert until activated with a certain action. Big Angel saying thank you for the super chat, Moe Kuhn. So there was a difference between there was a time delay between the shaking hands and the code activating, meaning the culprit had some plausible deniability. Okay, very cool. I dig this. We don't have a username for the culprit yet. Do we have any suggestions for the username of the culprit? I mean, no shade, but so many VTubers out there who are very much white like to give themselves a very Japanese name and call it a day. So maybe that's the energy here. Oh, Sparkle Friend is the hacker. The hacker who made the commit thing on Kawaii Sky. Oh yeah, Kawaii Sky. I like that. Kawaii Sky. Gotcha. Doing
Okay.
so we've resolved a handful of things. The code was administered into Big Angel 23 when they shook hands after a Guilty Gear Strive tournament, but the code didn't activate itself until Big Angel received a super chat and would say the words, "Thank you for the super chat, Moe Moe Kyun," and that activates the. So there is the time delay and plausible deniability of not having been there when the incident occurred.
The super chat heard around the world.
Doing model commissions or doing art commissions. Affordable art. Victim started up a big expensive commission and then endlessly deferred payment. An accomplice who's a hacker. I think we're almost there. I think we almost have the through line now of this line of events. So how did Kawaii Sky and Sparkle Friend like encounter each other? Like what gave Kawaii Sky the kind of like, oh, this is how I could murder Big Angel 23. So what's the meeting? What's the incident? That might also have been in Minecraft. So when we're playing this scenario, we have a reason to go to the Minecraft location and look around. Maybe they were working on the same project. I don't know what you build in Minecraft. Houses ostensibly, like in its like early alpha stages in like 2009, and then never again since.
Oh, friend. Okay, well, let's see. So we're trying to figure out, this is specific, is this how they met?
How the culprit and the accomplice kind of like, either it's an instance where they met or whether the culprit got the idea to talk to Sparkle Friend.
Okay. I mean, I'm kind of wondering if the incident is, you know, since we're making Minecraft a central part of this, something like the arm rig was picturing like just the incident being some VTuber tried to like playfully bop their friend and instead just set like freaking Goku punched them so they flew through a mountain. And they dropped all of their items. It was awful, and just being like, oh no, we can't use this.
I think VTubers in Minecraft have been buying suspicious wares that let them mine faster.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
And then Kawaii Sky witnesses it accidentally go out of control during a moment. It made the news. And then that meant that Kawaii Sky did their own digging into finding who made the wares.
I mean, the discourse was palpable. It was out there.
Cool. Okay. So we have our timeline of events. We have Kawaii Sky entering VTuberville and trying to make a name for themselves by doing image commissions. The big name VTuber, Big Angel 23. I suppose we should be checking if any of these usernames actually exist in the world and whether this is libel or whether I care. Big Angel 23 is like, I'll I'm big. I could help you be a star. Why don't you go and make some art of me and I'll pay you? And Kawaii Sky was like, oh, absolutely. And they worked really hard on it. And then Big Angel 23 was like, what? I don't remember doing that. Oh, well, I'll pay you down the line. When my super chat payment comes in, I'll make sure you're paid. And it never happens. It never happens. Then they meet each other on the street. They meet each other in Twitter Square. And Big Angel 23 act like they don't know nobody. And Kawaii Sky is like, right, that's it. We're going to have to get to the bottom of this. I'm going to enact my revenge. Fortunately for them, fortunately for Kawaii Sky, they saw in the news recently. Hey, Rook! They saw recently that there was an item in the news of a spate of people using suspicious wares in Minecraft to help them mine faster, and one of them made the character's rig go awry and accidentally injure a friend, although they're still alive. And Kawaii Sky does some digging themselves and manages to find the disgraced VTuber idol Sparkle Friend, or rather XX Sparkle Friend XX. And they collude and realize this is the plan. There is an upcoming Guilty Gear Strive tournament where Big Angel 23 and Kawaii Sky go up against each other. Big Angel does not recognize who Kawaii Sky is, and they shake hands on the end of their match, and that is when the code was administered. But Big Angel 23 did not die on the spot because it was a sleeper code that would activate when he said the words, "Thank you for the super chat, Moe Moe Q," leading to a circumstance where he his rig tore itself apart live on camera during a Minecraft stream. So that's the plan that happens. But the last thing that we need to add is, what steps in this plan did Kawaii Sky fuck up? Now that we know the order of events, we can start fitting in the ways where things maybe went wrong. Maybe having the code within Kawaii Sky and transferring it leaves some kind of evidence that can be traced. There is a string of glitched pixels on both Kawaii Sky's hand and Big Angel 23's, for example, where they shook hands.
Ooh, fun, yeah. I mean, if a lot of this was streamed, I think there would absolutely be, kind of like a, wait, stop the footage, enhance kind of moment, where you can see the victim's arm jitter a bit right after the handshake.
Hands caught live on stream. Indeed. I think also, yeah, Sparkle Friend's ego. Sparkle Friend always signs their viruses. Ooh. Yeah. Okay. The sound effect that was made on Big Angel's death was very distinctive. A remixed fucking brain aneurysm.mp3. I'm sure that's an MP3 that exists. A remixed like Germa soundbite. I've never watched a single Germa video in my life. A lot of people tell me I should, but maybe I'm okay and happy and in my lane. Like the way software pirate groups do. Yeah. This lethal virus is made by Sparkle Friend Collective. Support me on Killfee. Very good. And Sparkle likes to sign their viruses in such a way. Yeah, and Sparkle hates the idea of someone else taking credit for their work. So when an unrelated VTuber says they murdered Big Angel for clout. Sparkle broke cover. There we go, there we go. Any other? I mean, those are some, considering this is a very small mystery, we kind of get the idea of how this works now. But are there any other kind of like other clues that we can, other flaws in the plan that we can insert here? One more.
Let's see. I'll rub my beak while the audience also ponders it. Another wrinkle. Oh.
No,
okay?
you're good. Okay. I accidentally hit F1 and placing my water down. But we're good, we're good. I want to solve this mystery. Too bad I already know who the culprit is. Hey, we're doing it right. We're already making a tantalizing mystery just in 20 minutes.
I'm wondering, so do you think it'd be useful to get more connection between the culprit and the virus maker? Because I think it could be fun to have, like, you know, either leaked Discord comms or you know, there was a
oh my god, is it a cycle of not paying commissioners? And Kawaii Sky didn't pay for the wares, and now they have beef. Very good. I love that. That's an excellent final twist. As it happens,
cycle of violence.
It just keeps happening. Pay your commissioner. Pay the people you commission for art. Pay our artist people.
Or else heads will roll.
As it happens, Kawaii did not pay Sparkle for the commissioned wares, leading to a very spicy log of Discord ranting that leaked via a popular VTuber news / gossip manga. Excellent. I love that twist. That's an excellent one. We did it. And that's a mystery. That was easy. We wrote that in genuinely like 25 minutes.
Easy game.
You know, it is that easy to write a mystery. It's actually, and a lot of fun as well. But yeah,
I think it's a good testament that writing mysteries, really fun thing to do with another person, because this is like a real I find writing mysteries by myself, I can hit parts where I'm kind of like yes, you know, scratching my chin, and having someone else to mull over this stuff with can really, you know, you get some very good ping-ponging.
Dark Pocketmon says, and now watch players spend 8 hours just to ask who sent the mail for the first time. See, that's one of the really fun red herrings, though. It doesn't actually need to be the culprit. It could just be anybody that donated enough money to make the victim say the words that kill them, which would be a really interesting avenue for them to go investigate when they find out who sent the super chat that did it. But yes, that is the end of the presentation. Thank you so much for listening. I want to see this happen on stream. Hey, maybe one day I'll save that note list. So you know, you can we can run it as a scenario later, or I can write it as a scenario later. I have a little YouTube playlist of relevant actual play sessions and videos that talk about the nature of mystery writing that you can go watch there. So if you want additional information about the stuff that we've talked today, would like to go and see some of these theories run into practice, please do check out that link. Yeah. That has the videos there. And also, if you would like to go and see or read through this information in essay form, I actually wrote a lengthy essay about this a couple years ago, so there's been some new information about the nature of mystery writing games that didn't exist when I initially wrote it, but it's still good, alongside a whole bunch of other cool bits of tabletop goodness at itch.io, which I have placed at that link there. Thank you very much.